What's up everyone, it's Synchron here and today I'll be bringing you my Trap Burn deck profile. The main purpose of this deck is to inflict as much effect damage to your opponent's life points as possible depending on the cards you have set in your back row. We run cards like Lilith to search 3 trap cards from your deck and make your opponent randomly choose one of the 3 to set in your back row. I'll be explaining more in the video, so let's get started. So starting off with the traps, we do run 3 ceasefire. Basically, if a face down defense position monster or effect monster is on the field, you can flip all of those face down defense positions to face up attack position, and your opponent takes 500 damage for each effect monster on the field, which is good if you also have monsters on your side of the field that are effect monsters, not tokens. Then they take a little bit extra 500 damage depending on the amount of effect monsters on the field. 3 just desserts. For every monster they control, they take 500 damage, which is nice. 2 dimension wall. It's if your opponent declares a direct attack or just an attack in general, any battle damage you would take during that attack or battle, your opponent takes the damage you would have taken instead. 3 ring of destruction. You activate this card, you target a monster your opponent controls, destroy it, whatever its original attack was, or whatever its attack was when it was destroyed, you take the effect damage first, then your opponent takes the effect damage second. Now there's a card called Barrel Behind the Wall that I would suggest running with Ring of Destruction. So basically what Barrel Behind the Wall does is instead of if an effect is activated that would inflict life point damage to you, instead of you taking the damage, your opponent takes that damage. So in a sense, say your opponent has a 3,000 monster on the side of the field. Instead of you taking the 3,000, they take the first 3,000, and then the second effect has to the second effect would activate. They take another 3,000. So in a sense, they're taking 6,000. If they do have a 3,000 monster on their side of the field, but when Ring of Destruction is activated. I'll explain more in the description later. 2 Secret Barrel. Basically, for every card your opponent controls and in their hand, they take 200 points of damage. 2 Torrential Tributes, just for the board clearing. 2 Threatening Roar. Your opponent can't declare an attack that turn, so it just activated during the turn. Hopefully save your life points from attacks. Or if they run a mill deck, that's a completely different thing. 2 Storm of Mirror Force, just in case they get through your trap cards and you need to get rid of their field ASAP. 1 Magic Cylinder, target it when your opponent declares an attack. Target the attacking monster. Instead of you taking battle damage, your opponent takes the battle damage. It's okay, but the only issue is that it targets, and if your opponent controls a monster that can't be targeted, it's kind of dead. That's why I prefer to run 1 copy. Jar Avarice, basically target 5 cards in your grave, except itself, shuffle all 5 into the deck, and draw a card. You can only activate it once per turn. So, Jar Avarice is good just to recycle your trap cards, get them back in the deck, and hopefully draw them. And if not draw them, search them with the effect of Lilith. But other than that, those are the trap cards I run in the deck. Speaking of Lilith, you'd obviously want to run 3 just to search 3 of your normal trap cards and make your opponent randomly choose one of them. So say you activate Lilith, you search a ceasefire, a mirror force, and a magic cylinder. You shuffle it into your hand, and your opponent chooses one of them to set on your side of the field. Obviously, it doesn't have to be the different kinds. You could just search the same trap and just force your opponent to choose that same attack, set it on your side of the field, and activate it when you can. 2 Gandora. You summon this card with Summoner Source Apprentice Piper. Basically, it destroys the field and inflicts damage to your opponent equal to the highest original attack of one of the destroyed monsters, and Gandora basically gains that attack point. Hopefully you'd want, the majority of the time you'd want to burn your opponent as much as possible with the trap cards and Gandora if you can. If not, you're gonna have to sit on Gandora during your end phase because he does have your life points. To deal with your opponent's problematic monsters, I do run 2 Lava Golem. Requires 2 tributes on your opponent's side, and you basically use them a 3000 beater, but you can activate Ring of Destruction if you do feel like it, but not until your opponent takes that 1000 burn damage. I believe during the end phase, I could be wrong. And again, 2 Apprentice Piper. If it's flip summoned, you can't special summon a monster from your hand if it's destroyed by battle. Wait, let me just confirm that. Destroyed by battle, sent to battle or card effect. Special summon a monster from your hand, basically. And 2 Swift Scarecrow, discard it. Your opponent cannot. Let me just confirm that. And when your opponent declares a direct attack, you can send it. You can discard this card, negate the attack, then end the battle phase. So I think Swift Scarecrow is nice just to kind of save your life point. No, save your life points and prevent your opponent from attacking with their monsters. But depending on what deck you go up against, because there is a mill zombie deck, so in a sense, Swift Scarecrow would be kind of useless because that deck doesn't really attack. It just mills your whole deck from whole deck to the grave. But other than that, let's move on to the spells. Alright, so for the spells, since we do run a lot of 3-0s for the traps, we run 2 Pot of Desires. It's not really gonna hurt the deck if you manage to banish one of the trap trios, because you do have other cards to go into in case you do manage to banish the cards you may need. And we do run 2 Pot Duality to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, shuffle the rest back into the deck. Magical Mallet, add any number of cards from your hand to the deck and then draw the same amount of cards. So say you choose to add 2 cards from your hand to the deck. From your hand to the deck, shuffle it, then draw 2 cards basically. 2 Fang of Critias. The reason why we run Fang of Critias is because we run the Ring Destruction. And the reason why we run Ring Destruction is because we run 2 of the Destruction Dragons. Basically, it's kind of a better Ring of Destruction, only because we don't have Barrel Behind the Wall. And I figured, why not, like, kind of improvise with Fang of Critias. Just fusion summon Destruction Dragon out if you have a set Ring of Destruction or Ring of Destruction is in your hand. Basically, once Destruction Dragon's on the field, target a monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of that monster they controlled. And 1 Trune just to deal with the back row. Yes, it does reshuffle your back row, but if you want to reset your traps, kind of confuse your opponent, I would suggest running 1 at least to mess up your opponent's back row, get your traps back, and then kind of set them back in a different order. Finally, for the extra deck, the only card you'd really run in this build is just the 2 Destruction Dragon. Now, again, it's not that hard to go into. You just have to draw, Ring of Destruction isn't hard to go into. Fang of Critias, it shouldn't be too hard to draw into unless you do manage to banish it. But other than that, it doesn't really hurt the deck because it's only taking up 2 spaces in the extra deck. Now, I would say that this deck is not at all meta relevant, but it is more fun if you do take it to locals. I would suggest it and tweak it a little bit. If you do, again, I would highly suggest running Barrel Behind the Wall because that card is so dumb with Ring of Destruction. Again, you activate Ring of Destruction. Instead of you taking the battle damage the first time, you activate Barrel Behind the Wall. Instead of you taking that damage, your opponent takes the first damage, and then Ring of Destruction's effect, they still gotta take the second damage. So in a sense, that's just double effect damage to your opponent, etc. I just think the only reason why I don't have Barrel Behind the Wall is because I don't run it. No, I don't have it right now. I will buy it soon, and I will update this deck in the future if I can. But I hope you guys enjoy the deck profile, and I'll see you all later.